All right, and welcome back to another edition of Logician Tim Learns with me, your host, Logician Tim. And tonight we're going to be going over some more of The Witcher RPG. I'm really excited about this game. I don't know if you can tell. Now it is time to learn how to fight. So now it's time to fight. So how does that even work in this game? Well, let's find out. Let's dig in. I want to start off just by reading this cool paragraph. I like to read these bold paragraphs because this really sets the tone for the way the chapter is going to run. Combat in The Witcher is deadly, bloody, and punishing. When blades start swinging and arrows start flying, it's best for you to keep an eye out and plan your moves carefully. You can go running into battle, hacking and slashing hither and thither, but that likely won't help you too much in a real solid fight against anything tougher than a mugger in the local tavern. Always keep in mind that damage can be punishing and death is never too far away. A tactical warrior will always make it farther than a savage madman. They give us some tips before they start going into the hows and whats of combat. They give us some tips and just some general information of fighting in the game. The first thing they tell us is don't fight groups. It says while you engage one person, others attack you from behind and they'll dogpile on you and stab you in the back. To combat this, you want to keep your opponents in front of you and, wield a shield and keep your opponents at a distance. To keep this in mind when you're fighting, groups of bandits or, lesser monsters that tend to band together, it tells us that one is easy to kill, but fighting four or more is difficult. When you swing at one, three others attack you from behind. And it says, secondly, use your advantages. Exploit any advantage that you can think of to win. This is not, the art of combat where you're fighting in some type of tournament where style points matter. No, play dirty, play cheap. This is life or death. It tells you, if you're in a swamp, throw your enemy in the bog and attack them while they struggle to get out. Back your opponent into a corner so that they don't have anywhere to maneuver, or pin them down so a buddy can stab them, right between their armor if needed. But do anything it takes to win. And then it talks about critical wounds. You can die from a series of regular wounds, just like any other game, by them adding up over time and kind of slowly taking apart your hit points, taking down those hit points. But you can also die from a critical wound. And they describe critical wound like an internal bleeding or broken limbs or a compound fracture, brain damage, hemorrhaging, all those type of things that you might be able to continue to fight for a short time, but you're also going to have some negatives to your stats and abilities, but it's going to end your life. You're going to die if you don't see a doctor or spend a long time, and spend a long time recovering after seeing that doctor. So if you get a critical wound, you're in bad shape. And then it talks about fighting monsters. Fighting against a monster is very different than fighting a person. Monsters have special abilities and their own unique defenses that make fighting them, a lot more complicated than just fighting, a guy at the tavern. They have their own unique resistances and to conventional weapons, and they take much less damage from non-silver weapons. And so one of the sidebars in here talks about that monsters can take less damage unless your weapon has silver in it. But it talks about this, and it says, running into battle with a griffin and you're unaware of its damage resistance, and he's got something called Stunning Shriek, you'll probably have some very fatal issues. If you don't know what you're getting into and it's got this special ability you didn't know anything about, blam, you're dead. On the other hand, if you square up with something like a fiend and you know that they are stunned by loud noises, you might come away with a victory despite the amazingly unfair odds. So the key to fighting monsters, they tell us, is knowledge. If utilized properly, solid knowledge can turn a monster from unbeatable to survivable. So you might just win, an almost unwinnable fight just by knowing the strengths and weaknesses of that monster. In The Witcher, they said that combat is broken down into rounds, which is a block of time. It's about 3 seconds long, and it signifies the order of things that happen in the game. And then also they have what breaks down into initiative. They talk about initiative measures, how quickly the participants react to the situation that's going on around them. Before entering the rounds, the players and the NPCs, the people that you're fighting, you're going to roll for initiative. And this is a 1d10 plus your reflex stat. The higher number is going to go first, and then the second highest number is going to go second, and so on until you have your initiative all planned out. And that initiative is going to stay the same throughout that entire combat sequence. So once you have your initiative, it'll be turn to start taking actions on your turn. Okay, and they have a list of actions, like you can move the distance equal to your speed in meters and perform one action. So let's say my speed is 8 and I'm 8 meters away from this guy that we're going to fight, then in one action, I can move close to them and attack in that one action. You can make an attack. You can initiate verbal combat, which we're going to be going over that at a later date because there's verbal combat in here. I thought that's interesting. You can cast magic. You can use a skill to do something. You can run. If you choose to run, it tells you that it's your speed times 3. Also, in your action, you can actively dodge. So if you take your entire turn, you impose a -2 penalty on anyone trying to hit you with melee. You can also aim. So if you take your full turn to aim, like let's say you're shooting a bow, you raise your ranged attack by +1, and you can aim for up to 3 turns in a row, which will give you +3 to your attack. And then finally, you can take a recovery action for your turn. You can say, no, I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna try to recover for a little bit, and you're gonna get back stamina equal to your recovery stat each round that you're out of combat. And you can do these things to recover HP as well. And then you can hold your action. So let's say you were first in initiative. You can hold your action and not go right away. You can kind of like, no, I'm not going to be first. I'm going to hold my action. Then later on in the round, I can jump in the initiative list, like anywhere kind of I want to. And they have something called a fast draw, where you declare a fast draw at the start of the round, which is going to raise your initiative +3. So let's say we're third on the initiative list. Well, if you call a fast draw, that's going to give you +3 in your initiative, means you're going to be now first. It's going to give you a penalty of -3 to your attack. But now you're first, and you must make an attack when you do this. You can't benefit from aiming or other type of aiming related ability. You have to attack when you do that. This game uses line of sight, what they call a vision cone. Your facing direction matters. And so when you think of line of sight, that's pretty, if you can see them, then that's line of sight. There's nothing solid between you and the person that you want to attack or the thing that you want to attack. Then they have, secondly, the thing called the vision cone, which is in front of you. So if you think about it like shoulder to shoulder, it's like a cone going out at an angle. That's what you can see. But if you're wearing a helm or some other type of mask or something, then you're going to have a more narrow vision cone. Anything that is outside of your vision cone is basically invisible to you for the most part. Now, when targeting outside of that cone, because there is some spells and some things that you can do that target things outside of your vision cone, you're going to take a -3 to that attack, and you can't aim. And then if you're attacked from somebody outside of your vision cone, that enemy is going to get a +3 to their attack against you. So you want to kind of be aware of what's around you and which way you're facing. And they talk about ambushes in the game. And this is kind of interesting because you can gain bonuses to your attack by sneaking up on your enemies. You must be the one to instigate the combat to ambush a target. First, it tells us that you make a stealth check against the target's awareness check. And if you succeed, then you go unnoticed and you sneak up on them. Next, you're going to make your attack. So you're going to roll for your attack, and you're going to gain +5 against all targets who are unaware of you. After the ambush, everybody in the area makes an initiative roll, and it continues as normal from there. The ambush isn't counted as your first attack in the initiative. So then it starts talking about damage. All right, how is damage mitigated? How does damage work in The Witcher? And they break it down into 2 different categories called lethal and non-lethal. Lethal is any wound that's going to bring you closer to your death. It talks about when the amount of lethal damage is equal to your health points, you enter the death state and begin dying. And they have a whole section on this death state and dying. And we're going to get to that. Then non-lethal damage are things that impair you, like you're shocked or you're concussed or something like that. And when you take non-lethal damage that is equal to your health points, you're going to be knocked unconscious and treated as stunned, basically, until you recover at least 20 points of health with your recovery action. And then it tells us about the 2 different types of strikes, fast strike and a strong strike. A fast strike allows you to strike twice during a round without a penalty. They don't have to be made against the same target as long as they are both in range. So they said it's good when you're surrounded by a large group of enemies. Then secondly, they have what's called a strong strike, which is basically one huge attack, gives a -3 to your roll. But if you hit them, it's going to do a lot of damage. It does double the damage against that opponent. So that'd be good if you're fighting a slow opponent that's maybe easy to hit anyway, and maybe they're wearing a lot of armor and you need to really do a lot of damage quickly. And then after that, they start talking about the hit locations. After you attack, you're going to determine what body part that you hit. And there's a chart over here. If you're hitting a human and it has here, like if you roll a 1, you're going to hit them in the head. A torso is going to be 2 to 4. Your right arm, if you roll a 5, left arm, if you roll a 6, if you roll a 7 or 8, you hit them in the right leg. You hit them in the left leg if you hit a roll a 9 or a 10. So that's going to tell you which location that you hit them in. So you can aim for specific parts, but it's harder. And each part has a penalty to hit and a damage modifier. So let's say I want to aim for the head. Well, my penalty is -6 to that attack. So more than likely, it's going to be hard to go, I'm going to aim for their head and hit that. Versus I'm aiming for their torso, which is a big chunk of their body. That only has a -1 penalty to attack. So I can say, well, I'm going to aim for the torso, and that's only going to give me a -1 penalty. Or you can say I'm not aiming at all, and you're just going to roll the dice and see what that gives you. And then it tells you that after you reduce your damage based on their armor, you're going to multiply the remaining damage based on the modifier for the location. Let's say we're going to aim for their head. We're going to roll. We have a -6 penalty, so we have to overcome that penalty. And then if we hit them, we're going to do 3 times the damage. Now, if I hit them in the torso, it's only going to do 1 times the damage. If I hit them in the arm, either one of the arms or legs, it's going to take half the damage. And that's whether you aim or if you roll for that location. Certain types of attacks or spells strike multiple body parts all at once. And they're going to deal damage to every location separately. You're going to get the damage times half to your arm, times 1 to your torso, and times 3 to your heads. But never fear, because there's armor in this game. You're going to go out hopefully well equipped. All the armor has what they call stopping power, SP, stopping power. And that determines how much incoming damage that the armor is going to absorb when an opponent strikes you and attacks you. So what you're going to do is you're going to subtract the SP of your armor from the incoming damage relative to the location. If let's say our SP is 5 and somebody rolled a 6, and they hit me in the torso, that's only a 1 damage modifier. Because my SP is 5 on my chest piece, then it takes 5 of the damage, only 1 damage gets through, so I take 1 damage from my hit points. Now that's in addition to what they call damage resistance. This is structural or magical protection from certain types of damages, such as fireproof clothes or scaly skin or something like that. And damage resistance knocks the damage in half before applying to your armor's SP. And what that means is, let's say you're fireproof and somebody's attacking you or you're wearing fireproof clothes and somebody's attacking you with fire, it's going to immediately cut that in half. Then your armor is going to take up the stopping power from that. They allow you to layer your armor. Now, it comes at a cost, and I want to read a little bit to you. It says, layering armor may seem like a good idea. Stack up a gambeson, a brigadine, and some plate armor, and you can laugh off a damn ballista bolt. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that for 2 reasons. And it kind of goes into how armor is cumulative. And then secondly, not only do you look like the Michelin Man's mercenary brother, you're also wearing about 39 kilograms of armor alone, each layer adding more encumbrance. For this reason, you can only stack 3 pieces of armor, and you can only wear 1 layer of heavy armor and 1 layer of medium armor. They do have armor piercing stuff. There's 2 different types of armor piercing values. They have armor piercing and improved armor piercing. And so what that does is it negates the damage resistance of any armor that they hit. Now, improved armor piercing weapons not only ignore the damage resistance, but they also have the SP value of the armor that they hit. So each attack that goes through my armor and does damage to the wearer reduces the SP, the stopping power of the armor, by 1 point. When the SP reaches 0, the armor is fully broken and it will no longer soak up any damage whatsoever. So it's just trashed at that point. You're going to find a craftsman to either repair it or get something else. And they talk about using cover. When you're fighting somebody, you're not going to just stand there and just go head to head usually and just, sit there and bash each other. Typically, you're going to try to stick and move, maybe use some cover if you're throwing out ranged attacks. Cover, just like armor, has its own SP or stopping power values that the attacker has to go through, has to damage enough to get to you. If you're behind a wooden wall, it has a SP of 5. If he's shooting an arrow at you or casting a spell on you, he has to do at least 5 damage to bust through the wall. That wall is going to soak up 5 of that damage. Even if, let's say, it cast, 7 damage, and 5 of it's going to go to hitting the wall, and then 2 of it's going to hit you. So the rest of the damage strikes you and must get through your armor before doing damage to you if you're using cover, just like it would be if it was armor. You can also use human shields as cover as well. I thought this is really awesome. If you're using a human shield and someone tries to attack you through the shield, they must do enough damage to get past the shield's body stat. And so let's say it's Fred over here, and I know Fred's body stat is 17, then that now becomes the SP or stopping power for this human shield that you're wielding. The shield, or Fred, takes damage as if they had been hit, and any damage that penetrates the shield's SP, which is Fred's body, plus if he was wearing armor, you get that too. Then you'll take anything above that is going to hit you in the torso. Weapons have like a durability, and what they call it a reliability. And it basically just determines how easy it is to break. Once that gets down to 0, then that weapon's going to break, and you're going to either have to throw it away, or if you have a craftsman there in your group, then they'll be able to repair that for you and get you back fighting again. I think that's it. I think that I'm going to stop there for tonight. We still have a lot left to go over in combat. You have critical strikes and fumbles. We have all types of cool effects that can happen in combat, death saves and defenses. You have ranged weapons, bombs and traps. You can fight in water and snow and ice. The lighting levels, all these types of things can impact your roles and your advantages or disadvantages. Anyway, that's it for me tonight. I appreciate it. Y'all have a great night, and we will see you next time.